Hey, Professor here, and I've been flying Walksnail for just over 3 years. It's been out for around 4 years. Originally went digital just to get a better picture than analog could provide, and I really just did not want to go with DJI for various reasons, but mostly because of cost. At this point, I believe I have about 9 Walksnail quads, including a Cinelifter, 3 5-inch, 2 3.5-inch, a couple Cinewhoops, and tried one whoop, and I thought it was terrible. Now, during those 4 years that Walksnail's been out, CADDX has kind of made a lot of weird promises, announcements. Products have come out that have been a little bit of a strange choice. And they really, I mean, other than like the first year, they really haven't done a whole lot of improvement on Walksnail. It's all been like little minor bug fixes and things. And kind of in the back of my mind, I've always had a little bit of doubt, a little bit of regret as to picking Walksnail over DJI. But that all changes. Now, CADDX just released a new firmware, and it's a doozy. Now, while they kind of have some weird things going on with their version numbers, and they decided to release it on April Fools of all day, you can't really argue with the results. It's a damn big improvement over the old firmware. Now, let's take a look. Now, a buddy of mine got access to the beta firmware. This is 39.44.15, and he sent it to me back on March 18th. So since then I've been testing it, doing a lot of back and backs. Basically, I put the new firmware on the goggles, and I have 2 5-inch quads, so I put one on the old firmware and one on the new firmware. And then I flew at Melbourne Bar Park, which is where I'm at right now because I know it really well, and ran it back to back. I mean, ideally I would have done the old quad with the old goggle firmware and the new quad with the new goggle firmware. And one of the things I noticed was that with the new firmware on the goggles, it did seem like even with the old firmware on the quad, I got like a tiny bit better reception, which was kind of surprising. But with the new firmware on the quad, oh man. So the old firmware was 39.44.5, and I really, really hate their numbering scheme because it goes 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, then 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So this has been quite a few iterations since the last publicly released firmware. And nowhere in the notes do they mention RF improvement, but it's massively improved. So I'm gonna go home and load up my flights that I've done and kind of give you like a back-to-back comparison of old performance versus new performance. Okay, this is Melbourne Bar Park. This is where I was testing the new firmware, and I was sitting about here facing this direction. So on my goggles, I have 3 directional antennas and 1 omni. The directional antennas will be pointing that direction then. And for the first test, there's a stump about 900 feet out over here, and so I just fly up and over these trees, kind of drop down and circle that, and that's, like I said, about 900 feet out, and it's about 25 feet below where I was flying from, so not quite getting direct line of sight to the quad anymore. And then for the second test, there's these baseball fields in the middle, and I fly on this side of the fence, really close to it. And then you got like the chain link fence there, chain link fence here, and these metal bleachers. So you're trying to penetrate through all of those. And you can see it does pretty bad right there, but or it usually has a drop. And the third test is to fly this way along the path here. And with the like all my directional antennas are pointing the wrong direction for that. And that's also about 900 feet, but it's 900 feet behind me. So significantly worse reception because all my directional antennas are pointing the wrong way. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. Okay, so this is the old firmware on my Walksnail. It has a HDV2 camera, which is my preferred camera, but it kind of sucks at low light. And one of the bugs they had was that this one would always be a little bit more white balance would be a little bit more red than the Pro Cam, and it looks like that was one of the bugs they fixed. But as you can notice here, there's a lot more blurriness in the trees, a lot more like the browns getting smudged together. And when I get down here really low to the ground, like at this point it drops to like 13.9 or so, and then when I circle around, there's a spot where it gets down to like 4 megabits per second, which is usually where the smearing gets so terrible. Yeah, really bad there for a second, then take off. And then I'm going to show the new firmware. So yeah, this is the new firmware with a Walksnail Pro Cam with an aftermarket lens on it. As you can see, there's a lot less blurring in the branches and scraggle. And then when I get down close, it still drops down to around the 13, 14, but it kind of doesn't stay there as long. And then when I was flying around, I was trying to get it to go down to like the same 4 megabits that the other one was going down to, but it just like wanted to stay around like 14 to 25 and not go down to that 4 or do any smudging. So significantly better in this test. So this is the first quad again, old firmware. And so I'm going to go behind this fence right here, and you'll see it drop to like 14 and just stay there until I get past the bleachers, and then it pops back up. And then I'm going to show the third part test here on the old firmware, which is flying back here, back behind these trees, and it instantly just goes bad down to 12 and gets really, really smudgy, smeary, makes it really hard to see. And like, you can barely tell if there's anything on that path while I was flying it. So I kind of bailed out early, and there ended up being somebody back there with a dog. The new firmware, go back here, it does still drop down to about 14, but like for a brief second, and then immediately comes right back up. So significantly better performance there. And then when I go back to the back over here, it kind of drops down again, but instead of going down to 12, it stays at like 13, 14. So a couple more megabits per second with the same antenna setup facing the same direction. Significantly less smearing, so you can actually see through it to fly more. And so you get better picture with when you get down to lower megabits per second, and for some reason it stays at the higher megabits per second for longer. Okay, for the second test, we decided that we would fly 25 megabits at the Bando. So we're still at 100 FPS, and this is the old quad with the old firmware. And I noticed like a frame drop there, which is weird because it was directly in the open, but as soon as I get behind this, it just drops out for a couple seconds, like a second as I go past it. And then when I go past this building, it does drop down quite a bit in megabits, and I think, yeah, it does drop down to like 3 for a second there. So I was afraid to go any further back. So I'm just going to bring this one in and land it and switch over to the second quad. And I think you can see in here where I'm sitting. I'm in the shadow right there facing towards the first building I went behind. So here's the second quad with the new firmware. And as I was flying forward, I didn't notice any like dips or drops in the latency or the bit rate. But as soon as I get behind here, it still does drop, but it's like a quarter of the amount of time. So it's way like feels safer to fly. It's not as scary. The other weird thing that happens is back here, I'd kind of go wide to avoid this person that's walking there just to make sure. And I went closer back over here towards behind where I was, and I don't remember that pausing when I was actually flying that. So it must have just gotten weak enough that the DVR couldn't record those frames. And basically after this, we decided to have Jonathan, who runs an 04 Pro, go down to 25 megabits on brace mode, which kind of gives you the least amount of penetration you can get with DJI. And he kind of does the same path, flies in different parts, but as you can see, he kind of goes out wider over here. So you're probably going to fare a little bit better being further away from the object. But as he comes back in, you can see it drop down to like 4, 5 megabits per second. But you don't see the smearing that Walksnail gets you, but you do see banding in the blues up there. So it's like probably dropping color depth to save bandwidth, which is very smart. Second thing I wanted to show is he decided to go like right there. It did drop down to like 5 or 6, but he's going to fly back down towards the water, which is something I'm afraid to do in Walksnail. And he was able to get pretty close to the water off of this thing, so completely losing a line of sight to the quad, and it'll drop down to like I think 3 when he gets all the way down there, and the picture still looks pretty good at 3 megabits per second, which is way better than Walksnail. Like you can see there's the banding in the sky again, and but It's still flyable. It's pretty crazy. So Walksnail's getting close, but 04 still has quite a bit on it. So that's kind of the results of the new firmware. They did add a hop feature, which auto changes frequencies, and I tested that a little bit, but I didn't actually, I think I ran like 2 packs on it, and it did seem a little bit buggy, which a couple other people have reported as well, so I kind of didn't test that at all. But I think it's a huge improvement, and they're actually moving quite a bit closer to DJI, so I'm going to install it on all my quads. What are you going to do?